to talk a little Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma's top remaining offensive line target started trending to Nebraska over the weekend, but the Huskers made a move that could backfire on them. In this video, we're going to bring on the best OU recruiting insider in the business to break down the Sooners' chances at landing Grant Brix. How will OU finish their 2024 class and some major flip targets down the stretch? Oklahoma fans, subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. Look, almost to 20K. Sooner fans, help us get there. Hit subscribe. Thank you. Okay, let's bring on my guy, Josh McCuistion from Soonerscoop.com. And before we get into this whole Grant Brix situation, OU did land a major commitment. 4-star safety Reggie Powers over the weekend committed, top 20 player at his position. But Josh, the Sooners now have 27 commitments. We're getting down to those last few spots. What is the biggest remaining need for the Sooners left to fill before signing day?
Well, you with your lead in, you kind of answer your own question there. There's no question that offensive line still has some holes Oklahoma needs to fill. Several commitments in the class already, but landing a guy like Grant Brix, finishing with a guy like Eddie Pierre-Louis out of Tampa. And obviously, Oklahoma hasn't given up on the chase for Jordan Seaton. I know that's an unlikely win for Oklahoma, but they're hoping to get him in for an official visit. At that point, you kind of hope something great can happen for Oklahoma. I'm sure that's their thought. So there's no doubt that offensive line is the area they still have to address and largely have filled most of their other needs in this class.
Okay, well, then let's just talk Grant Brix right now. Why don't we? The number 3 ranked interior offensive lineman in the country. Seemed like his recruitment was starting to lean toward Oklahoma, but then this past weekend, there was a shift. The Nebraska staff, they parked their equipment truck outside Brix High School as a reminder of their presence in his recruitment. Josh, was this the big move that Husker fans think it was, or is this a chance that it could actually backfire on them?
It's an interesting conversation. Now, my initial response, knowing what I do at Grant Brix, talking to people that are around him, and again, I can't say it enough. He handles recruiting very differently than any player I've ever covered in roughly 20 years of doing this. He's a guy that doesn't even talk to the coaches a lot. This just isn't a guy that's very active with how he wants to, or not active, but just very subdued with his recruiting. He's not a guy that's what's on his mind all the time. He really is a guy thinking about his team and just doesn't get into all the pomp and circumstance. So you kind of wondered initially, like, is this going to backfire? This is a thing that when he walks into his school, everybody at his school is staring at him, and it makes him a bigger focus of attention. I don't know that suits his personality, but then when you look at it and he shows up in Lincoln on Saturday, maybe it did. Like maybe my read on that is wrong. But just knowing him, it feels different. It feels off strange, or it feels off place. But at the same time, I guess maybe he just likes big trucks. I don't know. I don't have a good answer. But like I said, my gut tells me it didn't work, but the results seem to have paid off.
Yeah, because you're right. He was in Lincoln, all smiles on the weekend on the sidelines at Nebraska. And the reason why he's trending so heavily on the recruiting prediction machine is because Husker insiders are making those predictions. The guys at On3, the guys at 24/7, all have him trending to Nebraska right now on the RPM. So from the Oklahoma perspective, are they right?
I don't doubt that there's concern. Now, I think what I have heard some talk, and I remember early in the season, there was a lot of talk that he was going to make his way to both Lincoln and Norman one more time before he made a decision. Now, that seemed to fade as the year went on. This may be the first step in that. That may be he goes to Lincoln, and then not this coming weekend, but the following one, Oklahoma will be back at home, and he could make a trip there. And then maybe he's ready to make a decision after months and months of us thinking it could be coming at any point. So I think there's valid concern. I don't think there's any question about that. A couple of weeks ago, I thought Oklahoma had just about closed this door, but I've for Nebraska before. Early in the season, I know Oklahoma really had to fight off a lot of talk of a decision that was really close to coming just before the start of the season. So it's tough to know. Like I said, with Grant Brix, you're reading tea leaves on everything because there's no hard and fast information. But if you made me pick right now, I probably would lean in Nebraska's direction a little bit, but I think it's going to be dependent if Oklahoma can get him back on campus.
Yeah, it sounds like coming from you, you don't think this one's quite over yet, whereas Nebraska experts are kind of leaning on the most recent developments and putting those
Mhm.
picks in. Now, I agree. If he does make it back to Norman, then I think this thing could sway right back in Oklahoma's favor. Not done yet. We'll see. Okay, not a lot of room left, but the Sooners will always have room for these names. They are 5-star flip targets. Let's bring them in here. Athlete Terry Bussey, who's committed to Texas A&M. Defensive lineman Williams Winery, who's committed to Mizzou. And 5-star defensive lineman Dominic McKinley, out of the state of Louisiana, but committed to Texas A&M. Let's start at the top. Terry Bussey's a very interesting one. He's been on campus at Oklahoma before. What are you hearing right now on where the Sooners stand?
You know, we talked about at the time of his commitment, Josh, that there was a feeling that Oklahoma felt like they were working towards signing day more than what his initial commitment was going to be. And I know he's got an outstanding relationship with Emmett Jones, Oklahoma's first-year wide receivers coach. They've really hit it off. I could argue that might be his best relationship. He really likes Emmett a lot. At the same time, the A&M pull, the reasons that he picked A&M are all still there. I mean, like we know they've put together a strong NIL package. There's a lot there for him to like, and it's why he chose A&M the first go around. So I don't know. We talked about it at the time. I felt like the wheels were going to have to come off at A&M, and we were going to have to see real cracks in the foundation before that was possible. Are we seeing that? I don't know. I mean, we're going to have to see the A&M money men to know what that's going to look like as far as what they want to do with Jimbo Fisher going forward. But at the same time, I think LSU's made a real run, and I think they're very much a part of the equation. What's interesting is both A&M and LSU like him at corner. Oklahoma wants him at receiver. Very unusually, he doesn't seem to have a preference. Usually that can work out for the school recruiting you at receiver because guys just want to have the ball, but Terry doesn't seem to let that factor in too much.
All right, now let's talk about Williams Winery. And I haven't heard as much around Oklahoma as we did in week one, right after he showed up in the Oklahoma. Was it cleats or gloves for his opening game?
It was gloves.
It was the cleats. Now, do we have any other uniform updates, or what is going on with Williams Winery and his recruitment to Oklahoma?
Yeah, I've never seen such a fashion-oriented Oklahoma fan base as we have this year. But no, with Williams, I think it's calmed down. I think you have to give a lot of credit to Missouri. It's because Missouri's on-field product has been so good. They look like they've made a real step forward. And that was kind of like what I talked about with Terry Bussey. That was always the assumption is if things go bad and things get shaky for that coaching staff, Oklahoma could have a door, the door could open for OU. But right now, both schools sit at 7-1 and are going to be playing in the SEC next year. Like, I don't know what Oklahoma's done to change the things that made Williams make that decision the first time around. Now, I know there's a lot of people that think that was, more about the family made that decision. And that's fine if you want to believe that. But at the same time, the family's not going anywhere. They're still his family. They're still part of this equation. And so I just don't know if I can believe that Oklahoma is going to turn that around when we all know, we've all heard the talk, Missouri rolled out the red carpet for Williams Winery. They are not going to be beaten on the things, NIL, the state has packaged a real win for Missouri, the university. So I don't know that I find it all that plausible. It's not impossible, but I struggle to find why that narrative is going to change, with a month or so to go now.
Yeah. Hey, and we'll see what happens down the stretch if Williams Winery can make it back to campus. But as of now, it seems like things kind of stalled out after those early season rumors. Now, one more 5-star flip target, though, and we're going to go back to Texas A&M because their commit list is vulnerable, and we are seeing some cracks in their foundation. Draylon Miller has decommitted. Weston Davis flips. Terry Bussey looking at LSU and Oklahoma. Now we get to Dominic McKinley, and he's in the trenches. He's a 5-star. He's from the state of Louisiana. He's committed to Texas A&M, and I'm sure, again, it could be a Sooners and LSU battle trying to loosen him up from this Texas A&M commitment. What do you think?
I think this one, and if you would have told me I would have felt this way a month ago, I don't think I would have believed you. But I think this is more likely than Williams-Nwaneri, strictly
Okay.
because, like you said, you're already starting to see the cracks in the foundation. And unlike Williams-Nwaneri, who we know at the time told our guy Chad Simmons that Georgia was actually his second choice. I mean, that was his runner-up option. If you take that at face value, well, you look at Dominic McKinley, I think it's pretty clear Oklahoma was his second option. That was the school that A&M beat out there at the end. If things were to fall apart now, LSU, again, we just can't rule out LSU in Louisiana. Anybody that's followed recruiting for 10 minutes knows that's just a inevitable reality of covering that state. But I know the family really liked the relationship they had with Todd Bates, the defensive line coach at Oklahoma. It's obviously a very faith-driven program. For those that aren't familiar with kind of the pillars of Oklahoma, now think of a very similar ideal to Dabo Swinney. There are a lot of I guess I would say faith initiatives in the way Oklahoma recruits. That's a big part of it. And I know that resonated with him, with his mother, and just the family in general. So I think that is part of the equation. But again, it's kind of one of those deals where Oklahoma needs things to get wobbly in College Station for this thing to change. Because if everybody stays, everybody remains, obviously that Texas A&M defense is playing well. It's hard to find many flaws, and especially with that defensive line and what they're doing. So I think that's a tough sell. But at the same time, if you see it get shaky, kind of like Terry Bussey, a visit back to Norman wouldn't be surprising. And then from there, anything's possible.
All right. Well, as we said, these are some major flip targets. Oklahoma sitting at 27 total commitments for the 24 class, but they'll always have room for the names that we just mentioned. Josh McQuistion, thank you for dropping by the Inside Scoop. We'll see if OU can get back on track this weekend against Oklahoma State. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime, Josh.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that content, be sure to subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We have a new page dedicated only to recruiting. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now.